The wealthy cowboy found the pregnant woman chained in darkness, and by dawn, she would be his bride. Gunshots cracked the morning air like breaking bones. Nathaniel Cross stood before the trembling preacher, his hand steady on his Colt. The pregnant woman beside him swayed against the courthouse steps, her dark skin gleaming with sweat in the early light. Sheriff Hawkins circled them with 3 deputies, their weapons drawn. The townspeople pressed close, faces twisted with fear and fascination. "Stop this mockery, Cross." Hawkins spat into the dirt. "That woman's a killer." Cross kept his eyes on the preacher. "The law says I can marry her. No man stops me." The woman turned toward him, her voice barely a whisper. "You don't understand what you've done." "Say the words, preacher." Cross's thumb found the hammer of his gun. The old man's hands shook as he opened his Bible.
"Do you, Nathaniel Cross, take this woman to be your lawful wedded wife?" "I do." "And do you, Mercy Williams, take this man?" She closed her eyes. "I do." "Then by the power vested in me by the territory of New Mexico, I pronounce you husband."
"And wife." The crowd erupted. Hawkins lowered his weapon, his face dark with rage. Cross holstered his gun and helped Mercy toward his horse. 24 hours earlier, Cross had ridden toward the abandoned Esperanza mine. Reports of squatters had reached his ranch, and he needed to investigate before his cattle drive next week. The autumn wind carried the scent of coming snow across the mesa. He found her in the root cellar beneath the old foreman's cabin, chains around her wrists, barely conscious, her belly round with child. Cross knelt beside her, his boots crunching on broken glass. "Ma'am, can you hear me?" Her eyes opened, dark and deep as winter wells. She tried to speak, but only managed to croak. He found water in his canteen and lifted her head. Easy now. She drank like someone who'd forgotten what water tasted like. When she finished, she gripped his wrist with surprising strength. "Please." Her voice was raw. "Don't let them take me back." Cross saw the locket around her neck then. Silver and tarnished. Inside were 3 photographs. 3 different men. He carried her to his horse and rode hard for town. She told him her name was Mercy Williams. She told him other things too. Things that made his blood run cold. Dr. Patterson met them at his office door. His face went white when he saw Mercy. "Sweet Lord." The doctor backed away. "That's the Black Widow of Silver Creek." Word spread through town like wildfire. By the time Cross helped Mercy into the doctor's office, a crowd had gathered outside. Their voices rose and fell like a dark tide. 3 husbands dead in 2 years. Cursed that one is. Death follows her like a shadow. Cross stood by the window while Patterson examined Mercy. The crowd outside grew larger, angrier. Someone threw a rock at the glass. "She's weak, but the baby's strong," Patterson said without looking at Cross. "But I won't have her staying here, bad for business. Then I'll take her to my ranch." "Cross, you don't understand." Patterson's hands trembled as he cleaned his instruments. "Every man who's married her has died within months. They say she poisons them, or worse." The door burst open. Sheriff Hawkins stepped inside, his badge catching the lamplight. Behind him came 2 deputies with rifles. "Mercy Williams," Hawkins announced. "You're under arrest for the murders of Thomas Reed, James Morrison, and Samuel Blake." Mercy sat up on the examination table. "I never killed anyone. Tell that to the judge." Hawkins produced iron shackles. "You're wanted in 3 counties. Cross stepped between them. "She's with child, Sheriff. Surely this can wait." "Murder. Don't wait for babies, Cross." Hawkins pushed past him. "Stand aside. What proof do you have?" 3 dead husbands ain't proof enough." Hawkins grabbed Mercy's wrist. "Come along, widow." Cross's hand found his gun. "I said stand aside." The room went quiet. Outside, the crowd had grown silent too, sensing violence in the air. Hawkins released Mercy and faced Cross. "You defending a killer now?" "I'm defending A pregnant woman who deserves a fair trial. She'll get her trial, right after she hangs. That night, Cross sat in his study with a bottle of whiskey and a book of territorial law. Mercy rested in his guest room, guarded by his foreman, Miguel. The house felt different with her in it. Heavier somehow. He found what he was looking for just before midnight. Article 7, Section 12 of the Territorial Marriage Code. Any citizen could claim spousal protection for another by right of marriage, granting immediate legal standing and appeal rights. Cross closed the book and climbed the stairs. Mercy was awake, staring at the ceiling. "I need to tell you something," he said from the doorway. She turned toward him. In the moonlight, her face looked carved from stone. "I'm innocent." Her voice was steady now, strong. "I know how it looks, but I never hurt those men." "Then why run?" "Because innocent don't matter when you're already guilty in their minds." Cross sat in the chair beside her bed. "There's a law, an old one. If I marry you, they can't touch you without a proper trial. Full legal protection." Mercy was quiet for a long time. "You'd risk that for someone you don't know?" "I won't watch an innocent woman hang." "And if I'm not innocent?" Cross met her eyes. "Then I'll have made a terrible mistake." She turned, back to the ceiling. "They'll come at dawn. Then we marry at dawn." The next morning, Cross helped Mercy down the courthouse steps toward his horse. The crowd parted reluctantly, their faces full of fear and confusion. Hawkins called after them, "This ain't over, Cross. Law or no law, that woman's poison. She'll be the death of you too." Cross helped Mercy into the saddle and mounted behind her. As they rode away from town, he felt her body relax against his chest. "Why?" she asked without turning around. Cross looked back at the courthouse, at the crowd still gathered in the dusty street, at Hawkins standing with his hands on his hips, watching them disappear into the morning haze. "Because sometimes a man has to choose between what's safe and what's right." The desert wind carried their words away like smoke. The marriage cost Cross everything within a week. Henderson's general store turned them away at the door. Mrs. Henderson crossed herself and pulled her children inside when she saw Mercy approaching. The sign in the window read, "No service to undesirables." Cross tied his horse to the post anyway. "Wait here." He returned with supplies and a grim expression. Mercy didn't ask what words had been exchanged inside. At the bank, President Morrison refused to see Cross. His secretary delivered the message through a barely opened door. "Mr. Morrison says your loan extension is denied. Payment in full by month's end." Cross folded the papers without reading. Them. $30,000. Money he didn't have liquid. The ranch hands quit in groups. First the younger ones, then the veterans. Miguel stood in the barn with his hat in his hands, 40 years of loyalty weighing heavy in his eyes. "I'm sorry, patron. My wife, she's afraid. Says the curse will spread to our children." Cross gripped the man's shoulder. "I understand." By week's end, only old Pete remained. The ancient cook had nowhere else to go and nothing left to fear. Mercy found Cross in his study that evening, staring at account books by lamplight. The numbers told a story of steady collapse. "Annul the marriage." She stood in the doorway like a ghost. "Before I destroy everything you've built." Cross didn't look up from his ledger. "Too late for that." "It's not too late. Say I tricked you. Say I bewitched you. They'd believe it." "Would you believe it?" She was quiet for a long time. Outside, coyotes called across the empty range where his cattle should have been grazing. "My first husband was a good man," she said finally. "Thomas Reed, worked a small claim up near Silver Creek. Found silver in paying quantities." Cross closed the ledger and faced her. He was excited. Said we'd build a real house, maybe start a family. Her hands rested on her swollen belly. 3 days later, they found him at the bottom of his mine shaft, broken neck. Accident? That's what they called it. But Thomas was careful, methodical. He wouldn't have fallen. Cross poured himself a whiskey, offered her water instead. I inherited his claim. James Morrison helped me with the paperwork. Said a widow needed protection. Married me within the month. The name Morrison struck Cross like cold steel. Bank. President Morrison, the man who'd denied his loan. James found irregularities in Thomas's claim. Survey markers moved, documents altered. Someone had been stealing from the mine before Thomas discovered the main vein. Mercy sat across from Cross, her movements careful and deliberate. James was going to report it to the territorial authorities, said it was bigger than just one stolen claim. She looked into her water glass. They found him in the creek. Drowned, they said, but James could swim like a fish. Cross felt something cold settle in his chest. Samuel Blake was different. A drifter who needed papers to stay in the territory. I needed someone to work Thomas's claim legally, a business arrangement. But he found something too. Mercy nodded. The same irregularities James had discovered. Survey fraud on a massive scale, claims being stolen from settlers who couldn't read or afford lawyers. What happened to him? Snakebite, rattler in his bedroll. Her voice was flat as prairie wind. Samuel always checked his gear twice, every night. Military habit from the war. Cross stood and walked to the window. His reflection stared back from the dark glass, hollow-eyed and older than his 35 years. 3 accidents. 3 widowhoods. And suddenly I'm the Black Widow. Mercy's chair creaked as she shifted. Easier to blame a cursed woman than investigate corruption. Who benefits from the stolen claims? Someone with enough power to alter territorial records. Someone who can make accidents happen. She paused. Someone who can turn a whole town against a pregnant widow. Cross thought of Morrison's cold dismissal at the bank, of Sheriff Hawkins's quick arrival after the wedding, of how efficiently his business had been destroyed. Thunder rumbled across the mesa, the first storm of winter approaching. My warehouse burned last night, Cross said to his reflection. I know. I saw the glow from my window. $15,000 in cattle feed. No insurance company will cover me now. He turned from the window. They're cutting off my air. Then let me go. Save yourself. And let them win? Mercy rose slowly, one hand supporting her back. You can't fight the whole territory. Watch me. The next morning, Cross saddled 2 horses. Mercy protested, but he helped her mount anyway. Where are we going? To see where your first husband died. They rode north toward Silver Creek, the wind carrying the scent of snow and secrets. The mine sat in a narrow canyon, its entrance boarded up and forgotten. Cross pried away the boards, while Mercy waited in the shade. Inside, his lantern revealed pick marks and broken timbers. And something else. Fresh survey stakes. New ones, driven into the rock face where the silver vein ran deepest. Someone's been working this claim, Cross called out. Mercy's voice echoed from the entrance. That's impossible. It's been abandoned since Thomas died. Cross examined the stakes more closely. Each bore the same mark, a territorial surveyor's seal, Morrison's seal. They spent the morning searching Thomas Reed's old cabin. In a coffee tin beneath loose floorboards, Cross found what they were looking for. Documents, claim certificates, survey maps, all showing systematic theft of mining rights across 3 counties. Thomas kept records, Mercy breathed. He knew someone was stealing from him. Cross spread the papers on the cabin's dusty table. A pattern emerged. Small claims purchased cheap from illiterate settlers. Survey boundaries mysteriously shifting. Rich veins suddenly appearing in adjacent properties. All signed and certified by Territorial Judge Morrison. The same Morrison who owned the bank. Who'd denied Cross's loan. Who'd married Mercy after her first husband's convenient death. He killed them all, Mercy said quietly. Thomas found the fraud. James tried to report it. Samuel discovered the evidence. Cross folded the documents carefully. And you're the only witness left alive. Thunder cracked overhead. The first drops of rain spattered the cabin's tin roof. That's why Hawkins was so eager to arrest you, Cross continued. Why the whole town turned against you so quickly? They needed you discredited or dead. Mercy sank into a broken chair, exhaustion written in every line of her body. I've been running for 2 years. Hiding. Afraid. She looked at Cross with something like hope in her dark eyes. But now there's proof. Cross tucked the documents inside his coat. Now we fight back. They rode home through the storm, lightning illuminating the path ahead. The ranch house looked different when they arrived. Empty, abandoned, like a place where ghosts lived. But it was still theirs. Still, standing. Cross helped Mercy from her horse, his hand steady despite everything falling apart around them. In the distance, smoke rose from the direction of town. Another fire, another accident. The war had begun. Cross recognized Sheriff Hawkins's handwriting on the surveyor documents, the same careful script that had signed Mercy's arrest warrant. He sat in the lamplight comparing the papers. Each fraudulent claim bore Hawkins's signature as witness. Each suspicious death had brought Hawkins to investigate. Always arriving too late to save anyone, always quick to close the case. Mercy slept fitfully in the chair beside the fireplace. Her pregnancy had grown difficult in recent weeks. The stress carved new lines around her eyes. Cross folded the documents and locked them in his desk drawer. Tomorrow he would ride to Santa Fe, contact the territorial marshal, present the evidence that would destroy Morrison and Hawkins both. He fell asleep planning their salvation. The sound of horses woke him before dawn. Cross moved to the window and counted shadows in the gray light. 8 riders, maybe more. Hawkins sat his horse in the yard, a torch burning in his left hand. Behind him, a collection of deputized townsmen with rifles and righteousness. Cross, Hawkins called. Send out the witch. Time for justice. Cross checked his rifle and moved to wake Mercy. She was already awake, one hand pressed to her belly. The baby, she whispered. Something's wrong. Her water had broken in the night. Contractions came in waves that left her gasping. Cross, Hawkins shouted again. We know you're in there. Send her out peaceful and maybe you live through this. Cross helped Mercy to the back bedroom. Her face was pale as winter sky. I can't run, she said through gritted teeth. Not like this. You won't have to. Cross barricaded the front door and checked his ammunition. 20 rounds for the rifle. 6 in his pistol. Not enough for 8 men. Old Pete appeared from the kitchen carrying his ancient shotgun. Been with this ranch 40 years, the cook said. Ain't leaving now. The contractions were coming faster. Mercy bit down on a leather strap to keep from crying out. Cross knelt beside her, feeling helpless as she fought to bring new life into a world trying to kill her. Get Doc Patterson, Hawkins called from the yard. Already tried, someone answered. Won't come, says it's cursed business. Mercy's fingernails cut crescents in Cross's palm as another wave hit her. The midwife, she gasped, Maria Santos, lives by the creek. Cross looked through the window. Hawkins had positioned men around the house, no way out without a fight. Pete, Cross said, can you slip out the root cellar? The old cook nodded. Been sneaking around this place since before you were born. Bring Maria Santos, tell her we'll pay double, triple. Pete disappeared into the kitchen shadows. Time moved like honey in winter. Mercy's labor intensified as the sun climbed higher. Outside, the deputies grew restless. Someone fired a warning shot into the air. This is your last chance, Cross, Hawkins shouted. Send her out, or we come in shooting. Cross called back from the window. She's having the baby, give us time. Time's up. That child ain't getting born to spread more evil. Maria Santos arrived like an answer to prayer. The old Mexican woman slipped through the deputies' line like smoke, carrying her birthing bag, and a lifetime of stubborn courage. She took one look at Mercy and began issuing orders in rapid Spanish. Cross found himself boiling water and tearing sheets while bullets occasionally thudded into the cabin walls. The head, Maria whispered. I see the head. Mercy bore down with the strength of someone fighting for 2 lives. Her cries mixed with the shouts of angry men outside. The baby came all at once. A boy, perfect and furious at the world that had tried to kill him before his first breath. Maria cleaned him quickly and placed him in Mercy's arms. The new mother looked at her son with wonder and terror in equal measure. "He's beautiful," Cross said. Mercy's tears fell on the baby's dark hair. His father would have been proud. "James Morrison? A good man. Better than I deserved." She looked at Cross with exhausted eyes. "This child is all I have left of him." Cross felt something break open in his chest. Not jealousy, something deeper. A fierce protectiveness that extended beyond duty or law. The baby was innocent, Mercy was innocent. And he would die before letting Hawkins touch either of them. "Cross," Hawkins's voice carried new menace. "We're done waiting. Coming in on the count of 10. Cross checked his rifle one more time. Pete had returned from his errand and taken position by the kitchen window. 1. Maria Santos finished with Mercy and picked up a kitchen knife. Her brown face was calm as still water. 2. Cross thought about his comfortable life a month ago. His respected name, his profitable business. All gone now, burned away by the choice to do right instead of staying safe. 3. He didn't regret it. 4. Mercy struggled to sit up, the baby clutched to her chest. 5. Cross realized something that stopped his breath. Somewhere in the past weeks of shared danger and quiet moments he had fallen in love. Not with the idea of saving her. With her. 6. With her strength. Her dignity under impossible pressure. The way she protected others even when she couldn't protect herself. 7. With the way she held her son like he was hope made flesh. 8. "Wait," Cross called out. He had one card left to play, one desperate gamble. 9. Cross stepped onto the front porch, his hands visible and empty. "I know about Morrison," he said loudly. "I know about the mining fraud, the stolen claims, all of it." The silence stretched like a held breath. "I have documents, proof, evidence that reaches all the way to Santa Fe." Hawkins lowered his rifle slightly. "What are you talking about?" "Thomas Reed kept records. James Morrison found irregularities. Samuel Blake discovered the pattern." Cross stepped further onto the porch. "You killed them all to hide a conspiracy." Some of the deputies exchanged glances. These were honest men who'd been told they were hunting a murderous witch. "You're talking nonsense," Hawkins said, but his voice carried less certainty. "Judge Morrison has been stealing claims from settlers for years, moving survey boundaries, falsifying documents." Cross pulled a single paper from his pocket. "Your signature is on half of them, Sheriff, as witness to fraud." One of the deputies lowered his weapon, then another. "That's enough," Hawkins snarled. He raised his rifle toward Cross. The shot came from the kitchen window. Old Pete's ancient marksmanship hadn't failed him. Hawkins spun and fell, clutching his shoulder. In the confusion that followed, Cross realized they had won something. Not safety, not yet. But time. Time to get the evidence to Santa Fe. Time to expose the conspiracy. Time for the truth to spread like wildfire across the territory. Inside, Mercy sang softly to her son, a lullaby in a language Cross didn't recognize. The sound carried hope and defiance in equal measure. The baby had been born into a world trying to destroy him, but he had survived his first battle, just like his mother. Cross and Mercy staged their own deaths on a Tuesday morning when the desert wind carried the scent of change. They had spent 3 days planning while the baby grew stronger, and Hawkins recovered from his shoulder wound. The sheriff would return with more men. Federal marshals were 2 weeks away. They needed to draw out the real power behind the conspiracy, Judge Morrison. Cross rode into town alone, leaving obvious tracks, toward his played-out silver mine in Devil's Canyon. Anyone following would see a desperate man seeking refuge in familiar ground. Mercy waited in the mine shaft with the baby, wrapped in blankets and hidden behind timber supports. Maria Santos had agreed to help, Her own grandsons threatened by Morrison's land grabs. The explosives came from Cross's construction supplies. Enough black powder to collapse the mine entrance convincingly. Enough to make it look like a cave-in had claimed 2 lives and buried the evidence forever. Cross lit the fuse and ran deeper into the shaft where Mercy waited. The explosion shook the mountain like thunder. Rocks tumbled down to seal the entrance, leaving only a narrow gap that Maria would clear from outside after dark. They waited in darkness while their enemies celebrated above. Hawkins arrived within hours, his arm in a sling, but his ambition intact. Cross heard voices through the rockfall. "Stupid fool trapped himself," Hawkins said. "Save us the trouble of hanging him." "What about the documents?" Another voice, younger, nervous. "Buried with him. Problem solved." But the voice Cross waited for came near sunset. Educated, authoritative. Judge Morrison himself had come to witness their destruction. "Unfortunate business," Morrison said. "Cross was a good man who made poor choices." "What about the woman and child?" Hawkins asked. "Tragic, but necessary. The territory is safer without her poison." Cross felt Mercy stiffen beside him in the darkness. Her son slept peacefully, unaware of the evil discussing his death. "The claims are clear now," Morrison continued. "Everyone. The Santos family will sell for what we offer or face the same justice." Morrison's laugh was cold as winter stone. "Justice? Yes. We've provided quite a lot of justice lately." They waited until the voices faded, until Maria's soft whistle signaled the all clear. She had cleared the escape route and brought horses, food, and something more precious than gold. Witnesses. Marshal William Carson had arrived from Santa Fe a week early, following reports of territorial corruption. Maria had found him at the hotel and brought him to hear Morrison's confession firsthand. Carson emerged from behind the rocks with 2 deputies and 20 years of federal authority. "Judge Morrison," Carson called, "you're under arrest for conspiracy, fraud, and accessory to murder." Morrison spun toward the voice, his face cycling through confusion, recognition, and terror. "Marshal Carson, I wasn't expecting you until next week." "Obviously." Cross stepped from the mine entrance, supporting Mercy and carrying their son. In the lamplight, they looked like ghosts returning from the grave. Morrison's face went white, as desert bones. "Impossible. The explosion, the cave-in, was very convincing," Cross agreed. "Almost as convincing as your concern for territorial justice." Carson produced iron shackles. "James Morrison, you're charged with violation of federal mining law, conspiracy to commit fraud, and accessory to murder in the deaths of Thomas Reed, James Morrison the Younger, and Samuel Blake." "You can't prove anything," Morrison snarled. Cross handed Carson the documents they'd recovered: survey records, claim certificates, financial ledgers showing systematic theft across 3 counties. "Your signature is on every fraudulent document," Cross said. "Your bank holds mortgages on every stolen claim. Your sheriff killed every man who discovered the truth." Hawkins tried to run. Carson's deputies caught him before he reached his horse. "I was following orders," Hawkins pleaded. "Morrison made me do it." "You made your choices," Carson replied. "Now face the consequences." The trial lasted 3 days. Morrison's conspiracy had stolen over $200,000 in mining claims from settlers who couldn't read English or afford lawyers. The federal court showed no mercy for territorial corruption. Judge Morrison received 20 years in federal prison. Sheriff Hawkins faced the hangman's noose for 3 counts of murder. The stolen lands were returned to their rightful owners. 6 months later, Cross stood in the same church that had once refused them entry. Mercy wore white silk and carried wildflowers. Their son slept in Maria Santos's arms, while the congregation sang hymns of redemption. This wedding had no gunshots, no threats, no desperate gambles, only love that had grown from shared trials and mutual respect. Reverend Matthews, the same preacher who had married them at gunpoint, spoke now of second chances and the power of truth. His hands didn't shake anymore. "Do you, Nathaniel Cross, take Mercy to be your beloved wife, for better or worse, in sickness and in health, for as long as you both shall live? I do. And do you, Mercy Cross, take Nathaniel to be your beloved husband through whatever storms may come? I do. They kissed while the congregation cheered. Outside, church bells rang across a territory slowly healing from corruption and fear. Cross's ranch prospered again. His reputation, nearly destroyed by false accusations, now gleamed brighter for having survived the fire. Men sought his counsel. Women brought their children to learn from Mercy's strength. The Santos family received clear title to their ancestral lands. Other dispossessed settlers won their claims back through Cross's legal assistance and Carson's federal oversight. The Black Widow of Silver Creek became the First Lady of Lincoln County. She started a school for children whose parents couldn't read. She helped other women escape dangerous situations. She turned her notoriety into a force for justice. Cross taught her son to ride on his 3rd birthday. The boy had his mother's dark eyes and his father's gentle heart. James Morrison Blake Cross would grow up knowing that good men sometimes die young, but their love lives on in the families they leave behind. A daughter followed 2 years later, then another son. The Cross family grew like wildflowers after rain, beautiful and resilient and impossible to uproot. On quiet evenings, Cross and Mercy sat on their porch watching the sunset paint the desert gold. They rarely spoke of the dark days when death seemed certain and hope felt foolish. But sometimes, when the wind carried the scent of distant storms, Mercy would take his hand and squeeze gently. A reminder that some bonds are forged in fire and emerge stronger than steel. Their marriage had begun with a desperate gamble at dawn. It became a testament to the power of choosing love over fear, truth over convenience, justice over safety. The territory remembered their story. Parents told it to children who faced their own impossible choices. Preachers used it in sermons about redemption. Lawyers cited it in cases involving territorial law. But for Cross and Mercy, it was simpler than legend. It was Tuesday morning coffee and Sunday afternoon rides. It was teaching children to read and helping neighbors through hard times. It was growing old together in a land that had tried to kill them both. It was love that began in darkness and bloomed in the light of truth. The desert wind still carried secrets across the mesa, but now it carried hope too. And that is all to the story. For now. Please let me know where you are tuning in from. Perhaps we will create a story there. Consider liking this video and subscribing to our channel. And if you enjoy our content, click this video on your screen. I promise you, it's worth watching. See you tomorrow.